Hello, and welcome to Still Standing. I'm Shannon Torrance. I'm your host. And today I have with me Sharon Jakubecy. The reason I'm excited to have Sharon here, other than that she has a great, interesting story to tell with lots of accompanying insights, is that the reason I know Sharon is that I had my own trials and tribulations as a voice actor who lost her voice as a result of I had a gut disorder called SIBO that caused acid reflux, which then led to vocal cord dysfunction and muscle tension dysphonia. So I was not able to work. I was, I had tried everything. And I worked with Sharon, who is a teacher of the Alexander technique, which we will talk about. And I'm going to read you her bio, but I'm excited about this story and our dynamic because our stories sort of line up chronologically. A lot of our difficulties happened during the pandemic when we suddenly found ourselves out of work. That was around the time when I sought help from her. And while muscle tension dysphonia takes years to heal from in a lot of cases, I don't want to say that it can't heal sooner. She was of immense help to me, and so it'll be really interesting to hear her story. But I'm going to read her bio, which is that in 2020, amidst the chaos of the pandemic, when her marriage suddenly ended and her business just about evaporated, Sharon Jakubecy, certified Alexander Technique teacher, had to grab every tool in her tool belt to survive the grief, trauma, and depression of life as she knew it disappearing. Clinging to her practices of Alexander technique, meditation, and mindfulness, therapy, dancing, and breathing coordination, she shares her story of wanting to shrink into nothingness, to taking up space and using her voice to inspire others to take bold actions. She
Hmm.
trains her clients in embodied confidence so they can optimize their performance under pressure and inspires audiences to stop playing small and empower their presence when she delivers her keynote talks. Thank you, Sharon Jakubecy, for being
Thank
here with me. That was the longest intro ever, but I think it's important to give context. So
thank
thank you
you.
for being here. I would love to start with talking about the Alexander technique. Tell us what that is and what it entails.
Yeah. So the Alexander technique is a modality that trains body and mind together. Uh, the man Alexander who developed the technique called it psychophysical reeducation. So, with gentle hands-on guidance and instruction, students of the Alexander technique learn to identify unconscious overworking patterns of tension and then how to gently, kindly, and even lovingly release those patterns so there is less of that compression that pulls someone down and makes them small. It also interferes with vocal production and vocal quality. And then they learn to let go of those patterns. So there's more ease of movement, less muscular tension. Oftentimes it helps heal pain. And then more presence in general, just taking up more space in general.
I love that. It's so relevant to me. So I'm so happy you reached out to me because, as I said, I was a successful voice actor. I had struggled my whole life to become a successful voice actor, taking low paying jobs, working all the actor side hustles. And suddenly my career just took off and I was making six figures and I was on top of the world. And then after 2 years, I lost my voice, which very interesting, right? From a psychological perspective, like, is there something underneath that? I don't deserve this. I don't make money. I'm not the kind of person who feels comfortable receiving money. And during that time, so relate with your story, which you'll tell, and not to make it about me, but just because we have this commonality, I just wanted to speak on it that first it was acid reflux, but then it became a panic disorder where I didn't trust my body. The second thing to know is that I was working 10 hours a day doing voiceover. So it's like being a football player running out on the field every single day for years and years and years. You're going to sustain injury. So I was holding all this tension of perfectionism. I have to deliver now. Every time I'd get an email, my clients were like, wow, you're the fastest at this, because I felt like I had to respond right then. Type A. Well, that created all this tension and miswiring in my vocal voicing mechanism. And I ended up with like this, where all of the tension held from not being able to be in flow with my body and comfortable and trusting the process manifested as a severe vocal disorder. So again, back to you, this is about you, but I really think that's sort of an important understanding of that's how why I turned to the Alexander technique.
Mm.
And I, like I said, I would have studied with you more if I'd had the funds, but I was like broke as a joke at the time. And it's so I'm so interested in this. So let's kind of go to where you were at the start of the pandemic, because you came very highly recommended. We both live in LA, or did at the time, and everyone, I've heard your name repeated. A lot of people know of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So at the start of the pandemic, I was actually down in Orange County, married. Um, Everything suddenly went online, and a lot of my clients, they love working with me in person. There is hands-on guidance
Yep.
that is so it's intelligent hands-on guidance. It's very calm hands-on guidance, and people, my clients love it.
Yeah.
And so when the pandemic hit, and I was like, hey, let's do online. People were like, oh, and at the time in the beginning, people were like, I'll wait the 6 weeks to come back.
Right.
And then the 6 weeks turned into 3 months. The 3 months turned in, and it
Yeah.
kept going on and on and on. And during 2020, towards the end, there was a very sudden end to my marriage. That was very shocking to me, and I would definitely say traumatizing. That that had me go to my mom's, and I was living in her office on her futon, so curled up into a little ball, like pretty
Been there.
stunned, tears streaming down my face. But I have to say, there was this moment where this little voice inside of me whispered, get up. Get up. You are not done. Like, I was so distraught and saddened and heartbroken, definitely heartbroken. I wanted to shrink so much. I wanted to shrink so I could actually disappear.
Yeah.
And when I heard that voice, and I knew I had tools that I've given clients who have gotten them cast on True Blood, and so many different TV shows and films, clients on Dancing with the Stars, clients on Longmire, and About a Boy. Some of these shows may not be on now, but at the time they were my clients who have been on TV, and I realized I needed to use all the tools that I gave to my clients to myself, so that I could take up, and that I was worthy of this Sharon size space on this planet.
That is so well said. I appreciate what you said, especially because, look, no matter how much we've trained to help other people heal, when it's you and you're in it and you're feeling the pain, which is totally normal, grief is completely a human experience that no matter how educated you are, and no matter how much you know how to get other people on a path to healing, it can be so difficult when you are yourself immersed in this pain that feels like the heaviest weight in the world. And I think too that when you hear people say, "Oh, I'm divorced," it's so common, right? Or you're like, "Oh, we had a breakup." It sounds so like, oh, commonplace, but a grief. I remember the first time I had a heartbreak, and my mom said, "The grief of a breakup is like somebody died. It's not
Mm.
less painful." So what I mean, at that moment, I know that it's an evolution, but sort of what were your first steps?
Well, my first steps were, first of all, allowing myself to grieve,
Yeah.
allowing myself to cry, and not, I mean, not just little tear, like
Yeah.
full on, like, "Ah," like really allowing myself that emotional release. And it's so funny, there's been a couple times since that initial event where I bumped into someone or seen someone, they're like, wow, you did great. What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm crying all the time.
Yeah.
Because when you try to bottle up all that emotion, people see it.
Right.
Our presence speaks much more than our words can say.
Yeah.
So, my first step was to allow myself to feel grief, allow myself to feel sadness, to feel anger, and then to let it out. Emotion means to move out. I had to let emotion move out and through my body.
Yeah, and I think that's so important too as part of the healing process when we talk about first, it's like get therapy, lean into your friends, do yoga, whatever, but sometimes we leave out that part of the healing is don't stuff those feelings, sit with them and go, what is really like I kind of have learned to as a 12-step recovery person, I used to just escape, escape, escape. I don't want to feel it. I don't want to feel it. And part of it is sit with it and then I kind of do a thing now where I'm like, "Okay, what does this feel like in my body?
Mhm.
Is it going to kill me? No, it's uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Is it a piercing pain? Where is it in my body?" And kind of analyze it and sit with it and realize it's not going to kill you. So I would love to hear your process
Mhm.
of that.
Yeah, and it is not definitely anything in one instant. I also I'm a dancer and a choreographer. I don't do that professionally, but that's just been in my being all my life, pretty much. And so I definitely need to move. Like I hike it out, I shake it out. I'm a salsa dancer. And so I go salsa dancing. So I spin it out, I dip it out, and then also some authentic movement where one person is observing, the other person's just moving however they feel compelled to move. Some ecstatic dance, any kind of movement has helped me to release and to be honest with myself when I am in my body and moving my body. I have to be honest with myself. And
Yeah,
so
can expand on that a little? I'd like to know what you mean by being honest with yourself.
I can't ignore when there's that little gut voice, when there's that nagging sensation like, oh, I'm actually really angry. And when I'm dancing and moving, I can't ignore those messages from our bodies. So I hope this is helpful for your audience. Maybe your audience already knows this, but our bodies are continually speaking to us. And there is a sense called interoception. And our interoception is our internal awareness. So at the most basic level, it'll be, oh, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need to go to the bathroom. But when we really pay attention to our bodies and listen to our bodies, there will be other sensations like, oh, I have this nervous feeling in my stomach. And for me, sometimes it was really becoming aware of rage. And my body, when I dance and I move, that makes me breathe. And then my breath goes deeper into my body. My body is giving me honest messages, authentic messages. So when I move and I'm breathing more fully, more deeply, I can't ignore those messages.
Yeah, yoga's like that for me too, and for a lot of people. And it's like it's a moving meditation where it's a meditation because you're focusing on the movement and holding a pose. And when you're doing that, you're not thinking about other things. And it's the breathing, right? Yeah. And it's also breathing, which I'd love to speak with you about because I'm sure you have a bevy of information about the power of breath work, why that all works.
Yeah, a lot of my Alexander sessions, I do incorporate what I call I didn't come up with this term, breathing coordination. And breathing coordination is an awareness of what's happening around breathing. And a lot of modalities can overemphasize take a deep breath.
Hmm.
Everyone's been told, like, even if you are dealing with anxiety, stress, someone will say, just take a deep breath. But as I said that, you may even notice in your own body that's like, "Ugh."
Yeah.
When someone tells me take a deep breath, I don't all of a sudden get calm. I'm like gasping.
Yeah.
And so in my sessions, I'm definitely talking about letting the old breath out. When you allow the old breath out, that is actually the soothing phase of breathing. And all of the muscles involved with breathing, including the neck, the throat, but definitely the shoulders, around the chest, around the back, all of the muscles involved with breathing soften and release on the out breath. And you can slow down your breath rate with the out breaths, which slows down your heart rate, which then soothes the nervous system, and the thinking can quiet down, or at least slow down a little bit. So in my work around breathing coordination is heightening habits around maybe gasping or compressing around what I call the breathing container. Your torso is a breathing container. And when there's squeezing and tightening around the breathing container, your breath rate increases, you get more anxiety, more stress, and the muscles tighten. And then even your voice, like from your experience, your voice will get more throaty or just stop. And then giving people a sense of breath being movement in the entire torso. It's like taking a personal prison off your body when you realize, like, oh, my ribs move. And when
Yeah.
people allow their ribs to move, it's so freeing, not only the breathing but the voice and just general movement as well.
I That resonates so much because when I was doing vocal coaching to try to heal, to I was thinking like we have to do vocal exercises to loosen things up, which is important as it's, but that's more preventative. What I kind of learned is that there was a lot of learning to my vocal coach said to me, and I'll drop her name, Alyssa Weinzimmer. She's great for vocal therapy because she also suffered from muscle tension dysphonia. And she said, forget all of the techniques. We're going to focus on calming your nervous system. I was so frustrated because not with her, but just like, but I just get me my voice back. Like, okay, that's great. Yoga, meditation. But she was right. And I asked her, how long is this going to take? And she's like, I'm not going to tell you. And because she knew if she said the truth, which is probably years and maintenance,
Mhm.
I was going to lose hope and give up. And so she's like, I'm not going to tell you a time. But she was right. It started with you have to retrain your neural pathways to respond differently. So when I would take a deep breath, I noticed even as of recently, I noticed that when I was trying to regulate my breath and, that I was actually holding my breath while I was doing voiceover. That's why, because I wasn't using my authentic voice. I was, okay, this is right now at JC Penney, and it's like, if I were to say to you right now at JC Penney's,
Mhm.
I wouldn't even be thinking about how it sounds. I would just be, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. There's this great thing happening. And so I would notice that I was inadvertently holding my breath every time I go to read. It was like, get in front of the mic, I'm holding my breath. And it's kind of how you breathe. Like, we're so taught to hold this gut in because women have to be skinny and don't let your gut hang out. Well, guess what? My best reads are when I let my gut hang all the way out,
Mhm.
that I have more capacity for breath.
Mhm.
And so in your case, as you're going through this deep grief
Yeah.
and also the isolation. So I lived with my boyfriend at the time. So for me, the pandemic was great times. I was like, I'm fine. I'm not lonely. I'm actually living my best life. Were you, I'm assuming, just going through a divorce, being on your own, how did you cope with that loneliness?
I went to my mom's.
Yeah.
So I was at my
Yeah.
mom's. And there is something in me. I am a very social person. So I'm not sure if I'm an introverted extrovert
Mhm.
or an extroverted introvert, but I definitely reached out to people.
Yes.
I called people, I did Zoom meetings. I had to reach out to people. And then I also have experience in certain 12-step programs. So the Zoom meetings were great because then I
Yeah.
didn't have to drive anywhere and I was getting on Zoom meetings. And I am not one of those people that doesn't want to share. I always
Yeah.
want to
Oh, me too. I'm always the first to share.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, when I was a kid, I was always the first person when at a dance, I was the first person on the dance floor,
Hmm.
and even if
Yeah.
I'm always like, me, pick me.
Perfect line of work for you to be in.
Right.
Or the one that you're in, I mean, like really, because it's expressing ourselves is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
so,
connection.
and connection has been vital. I mean, there is still some isolation for me. I'm not at my mom's currently, and what I'm also learning now is that I need to be with myself.
Hmm.
I need to come back into myself and rediscover what I love to do and what makes me laugh instead of any sort of people pleasing and taking care of others. I am taking care of myself and asking myself, what do I feel like having for dinner? And making myself that. And like over the holidays, over Thanksgiving, someone asked me in my family, so what's going on with the dating life? And I was like, I'm dating myself.
Yes. That's what I love about being single. It's such a good time to learn how to take care of yourself if you have the tools, and even if you don't, to learn how to self-soothe. So I'd love to talk with you about relationships, and relationships. And I think that there's obviously it's so wonderful to partner with the right person and somebody who's supportive. And as long as it's a healthy relationship, there's so many advantages to being in a couple. But then there are some disadvantages. So I would love to hear more about that for you. That, of course, you miss your person and you feel abandoned and wounded, and there's grief in withdrawal from the connection. But yeah, I'd love to hear more about that in terms of what ways you maybe learn to self-soothe or find the joy in that being aloneness.
Yeah. Um, yeah, my divorce isn't even over, even though that event happened 3 years
Oh my
ago.
god, what a nightmare.
And I in hindsight, the beginning of that relationship was like I found my person. Like I I would say I'm in some ways I can say I am madly in love.
Yeah.
Definitely was madly in love, but like the mad part, like like a little bit mad and
Yeah.
and like insanely in love.
Yeah.
And I can see that in myself. And I can see like my part to want to put rose colored glasses on to just see what I want to see and to just love the parts and the 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 parts of a relationship that were maybe less healthy. I see like me wanting to go in there and be like, I'm a Buddhist. I am an Alexander technique. I can fix this situation.
Yeah.
And that is not functional.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's not a healthy tool.
Right.
I have a resilience that sometimes is not a good resilience. It's a little too
Tell
resilient.
tell me about that.
To stick around in situations that are not healthy and be like, I have tools, I have resilience
Oh my
tools. I
gosh.
can stick
So
around
relatable. Yeah.
and and I can deal with this. And really in hindsight, I maybe should have removed myself sooner to take care of myself instead of telling other people around me what they need to heal and what they need to fix. and what they need to stop doing or doing. Like,
So relatable.
I need to come back to myself.
Yeah, I think even if we're not a codependent, like we self-identified codependent, my biggest thing was emotional dependency. And because I didn't trust myself to take care of myself, so I would look for other people to do it. And guess what? I picked people who couldn't do it. And that became a reflection of my self-worth in my mind, which is not true. But it was why did I attract only people that were not able to love me the way that I needed? And that was because I feel that my lesson, the universe, whatever you want to call it, was trying to teach me that, hey, nobody else can take care of you but you. And I remember my qualifier, which is what we in Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous,
Mhm.
the qualifier is your drug. It's the person who drove it, like your main person who drove you to the program in the first place because they were a mirror to you and made you realize that this is an addiction. And that person even said to me during one of many times he kept breaking up with me was he said, you know what? I can't meet these needs for you. But he goes, even if I wanted to, I could die tomorrow. And what would you do? You know, you can't rely on me to make yourself feel good. You have to make yourself feel good. Now we're both in program, which is like years later, we're both in the program. But I think that's such an important lesson that you don't want to be so self-reliant that you ignore those, like you said, that you compromise your needs or that you settle for less than you need. But you also can't rely on somebody else to, they're not your mom. They're not your parent. They're another person that exists outside of you. And so it is such a fine line. And I feel like I'm in a really good place with it now, but there's such a fine line between trusting someone and letting them meet your needs, but also not becoming dependent on them and holding your own center. So anything you want to riff on in that regard, I would love to hear.
There are so many things
Yeah.
about me staying in my own center. In the Alexander technique, what I am taught, and this was 20 years ago, I qualified to become an Alexander technique teacher 20 years ago in 2003. And what I was taught as a teacher was come back to yourself, come back to your
Mhm.
back. So when I'm teaching someone else, it's so like I need to be in myself, I need to be in my body. So the container of an Alexander technique session is quite healthy in
Yeah.
that way. And then when I got into a long-term romantic relationship and marriage, that was more difficult to be there because there's someone saying I love you and me being like, you love me, and of course I said that
Yeah.
back. And so now sort of seeing like that Alexander skill of I need to be with myself. I need to stay with myself in the romantic relationship. And so that I can really listen to, I heard my body tell me things like, oh, my shoulders are up to my ears. Um, and that like, Sharon, like, listen to that.
Oh, girl. You know, I was in a relationship for 8 years when I met you,
Mhm.
and this is no diss to him at all. He's a lovely person. We were not right for each other at all. First few years we were, and then we weren't. But we were in a position where we lived together. I had lost my voice and couldn't work. We had cats together in a house together, and I was so close with his family. So there's this enmeshment where it's like I knew he wasn't right for me, and he did too, but we weren't vocalizing it. And I was going to ask you this. I had so many health problems in addition to muscle tension dysphonia. I had, I mean, the gut disorder, that was kind of an ongoing thing I didn't know. But when I look back, it was like I was bedridden with adrenal fatigue, migraines.
Mhm.
And that was part of the problem is he was always like, you're always sick. There's always something wrong with you. You can never go out with me. I want a partner who can show up and be a part of my life. And I look back and realize that so much of those illnesses were a stress response to being with someone that was not in alignment. And I know he felt the same, so I'm not blaming him at all. So did you experience that too in some way?
Um, I didn't literally get sick.
Yeah.
Um, but there were like I definitely was feeling a level of stress
Hmm.
that wasn't something that I wanted in my life. And I was often dealing with difficulty with my business teaching Alexander technique. I've some clients in Orange County, some clients in LA, and then going back to a dynamic that wasn't healthy for me. And those coping skills that Alexander gave me, and I'm also a Buddhist meditator, the coping skills that meditation gave me, I feel like I was trying to use those skills to stay in the environment that wasn't working for me. Like
Right.
I felt definitely felt fatigued, and
Mm.
then was having a hard time sleeping. Um, would have muscle pain here and there, but it was all related to me completely stressing out, and then realizing like, oh, now that I'm in a totally different situation and I'm dating myself right now, I'm like, oh, I was using my coping skills to stay maybe in an environment that I didn't really need to be in.
Yes. I mean, there were, for years, we both were like, we don't want to be in this anymore, but we couldn't bring ourselves to say it. And now we're both with people that are
Mhm.
so much more in alignment with us. And it's like, just, and I'm so happy for him that he found someone. And it's like, oh, this makes more sense. But I wanted to ask you about, what was it that drew you to the Alexander technique in the first place?
Ah, my hip and low back. So I was in my 20s. I am a dancer, choreographer in my 20s, and also had a job working with children with autism.
Mm,
I'm sitting in those teeny tiny little chairs for little kids, dealing with the stress of working with kids with autism and then going to rehearsal afterwards. And so I had excruciating hip and low back pain.
yeah.
The point where I thought something is seriously wrong. And it was like my body was always screaming at me. Like my relationship to my body was just, it's a painful body. And then another dancer suggested, hey, why don't you go to this guy? He teaches something called the Alexander technique. And I didn't, and he had just taken a couple sessions with the teacher, and he was trying to give me like some hands-on guidance, which was kind of funny because he was not a teacher at all. Hindsight, after I finished my training in 2003, he then went to the school. The person that gave me my first hands-on guidance with no training then became a teacher after. And so in my first lesson with the Alexander, not with the person that told me about Alexander technique, but with the Alexander teacher, it's like my body disappeared. All the pain was gone.
Mm,
And I had no clue what had just happened, but I didn't have pain. And I
incredible.
was like, what is going on? Because like I said, I always had pain. It was always nagging me. And that the quietness in my body was remarkable as an understatement.
Yeah,
And then I kept taking sessions, and my ability to handle stress and deal with a very stressful job teaching little children with autism became easier.
that's great.
And then there was a certain point where I was on a track to become, more qualified, maybe get a master's degree in special education. And I decided not to do that. I was like, I'm going to train to become an Alexander Technique teacher instead.
That's wonderful. My sister is a special ed teacher. She teaches autistic teenagers, which is a
Mm.
challenge, and she's wonderful at it. But she comes home exhausted every single day because there's actually there are physical assaults that happen. They have to lock down because somebody escapes, and runs away, and and again, she's the best person for it, but she said, I just don't know if I can continue doing this into next year because it's only been 2 years and already she's like after being a homeschool mom for 10 years and then going back into the workforce and going first year, I love this, I have a purpose, I love the kids so much, to
Mm.
this is taking a toll. I don't think I can do this. So understandable. It's a wonderful, important profession, but it is not, then you're not getting paid enough for, for what you do. So that's fantastic. Now, so this is the pandemic, I'm going to say is like a 2 to 3 year kind of thing. So during this time, what are you doing to support yourself? What are some of the problem solving? Because I know I was like, I can't drive. I used to be a nanny. I used to drive for Uber, but now it's the pandemic, and I just personally got into $30,000 worth of debt living on credit cards. But and you don't have to talk about your finances, but just like what were some of the struggles and what were you going to do next with such a specialty career?
There were some of my current clients at the time that were okay with shifting to Zoom sessions. I
Yeah,
mean, thank goodness for Zoom at that time. That
I
Zoom
know.
was
I know.
a big deal. And then I also I had become certified in 2017 to do corporate mindfulness. So there were some companies that reached out to me and I did some virtual corporate sessions. I also, because of social media and specifically Facebook, I connected with people I went to high school with and people I went to college with and started sharing that I not only am an Alexander Technique teacher, but I do corporate mindfulness sessions
Mhm.
and was doing corporate mindfulness sessions for a law firm, for a couple different companies, um, a company in El Segundo called Dynamic Systems, and they create like computing systems. Another LA promo, which they do promotional gear. And so I
Mhm.
gave um, some mindfulness sessions to them. And fortunately, that is doable online. And then I also did some catering. So despite a lot of the shutdowns, people were having parties
Yeah, in LA.
in LA. So, we were masked and stuff, but I was doing some catering. I was serving. And at the time, it was such a huge gift to me because I was moving, I
Yeah.
was interacting with a lot of people, which would help me get my mind off of my woes and my difficulties. So I'm super grateful for those catering jobs and like all these wild parties that I catered at where I was so exhausted at the end of the shift that I just slept like a
Yeah.
log. And I was so grateful to be so tired and to sleep well. And then I also got into some pet sitting.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
when people started to travel again, I started caring for animals when people were going on longer term trips, like 2 or 3 weeks. And the animals, so caring for the animals, and then they're seeking love and attention from me. And that was also a huge part of my healing. Like, I
Yeah.
am a lover, I'm like
Me too.
super affectionate. And so I could pour that into the animals and take care of them and make money at the same time. So I really like pivoted in so many directions to be able to take care of myself financially during the pandemic. And yeah, that's still a work in progress.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I think it's important because there's so many people that have fallen on hard economic times, and I really like to, I don't know, like give people ideas sometimes because I've done it all as an actor, and I've been a nanny a bit, and I'm same reason. I'm so good with kids because I love
Me
like
too.
I love babies and kids, and I love animals, and I don't want kids, but I love to love. So it's sort of thinking outside of the box. Is like, what are my skills and what do I have to offer, which is having to get creative. I've catered a lot. I loved catering until I didn't. It just,
Yeah.
it's the fun, getting all sweaty and dirty and interacting and going to fabulous Hollywood parties and the Oscars and all these fun things and getting exercise. I was in the
That's
great
the
shape. Yep,
exception.
getting great, fed great, like wonderful high-end food, getting to go to fancy weddings, and that was all really fun until you're like, okay, I'm exhausted and I'm only getting paid $14 an hour. But it was a real, at the time, it was a really helpful thing. Now, I know that this wasn't just an overnight thing, but at what point did you start to kind of notice, like, I'm starting to get my groove back?
Mm. There was a point that was a little over a year ago, and I was still like crying, and I was like, I don't have a
Oh,
husband,
yeah.
I don't have a house, I don't have a dog. We had a beautiful German Shepherd. And then there was this like shift inside of me where I was like, huh, I don't have a husband. I don't have a house. I don't have a dog.
Yeah,
I have freedom.
freedom. That I know.
And
Love that.
so I really have leaned into that. I went, I keep thinking it was last year, but it was just the beginning of this year. I went to Costa Rica for 5 weeks.
So did I. I did the same thing as I was like, I'm going to Costa Rica by myself.
Yeah, I went to Costa Rica in January of this year. It feels like it was a year over more, way more than that. And I did a surf retreat. I did a yoga retreat.
Yes.
I also did a corporate gig, a virtual corporate gig, where I actually was paid the most money for 1 hour of work in my entire life from Costa Rica.
Oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
don't even pay me. Just I'd be like, the being here is enough of a gift. And then getting to do that, that is so wonderful. It's, I always say it's like there have been moments in my life that are my eat, pray, love moments. I said, minus Italy and minus the lover and minus minus finding the love of my life. But there's that moment where, yes, the joy in being released is like, wait a second, I own my life. I don't have children. I don't have any dependents. I don't have a husband, which some people might say, well, I'm behind. I'm middle aged and I'm alone. And it's like, my friends who are married are like, oh my God, I wish I could go to Costa Rica by myself. I wish I had a moment of breathing room. I wish my kids would just give me like a second to breathe. And it's not that they're ungrateful. It's just that the reality is the grass is always greener. I love that I love that you shared that because I think so many people think like, oh, it's not, my life didn't turn out the way I wanted, or I'm alone and there's something wrong with that. And uh no, honey, this is your chance to be fully you.
Yeah. And I still have those moments where I'm like, oh man, I'm a menopausal woman,
Yep.
now
Me
single,
too.
and and doesn't have the trappings of what
Yeah.
we were taught we were supposed to have. And there's some moments of grief and sadness, and then the reality is that all of those things that we taught we were supposed to have, there come big challenges and big demands. And um I just want to be so sensitive because I'm not anti-marriage, but a marriage is not all bliss. Like
Yeah.
are there are lots of even our own childhood issues that come up, and we have, if two people cannot look at them and explore them, talk about them, and get professional help with them, there's no way the marriage can be healthy, and if they stay together, but it can definitely end.
I think that's important. And again, not to bash marriage. It's not for me necessarily. I may do it again. I probably at this age, why? I mean, unless they want to and we're in love. But I don't see a need for it myself. And I think that it doesn't mean that I don't support other people in doing it. I just know that every person, barring two couples I know, who are truly like, this is my person, they're my best friend, they think each other walks on water and like they have a really beautiful communication and everything. I don't really know anyone in a couple who's like, this is bliss. Almost everyone I know is like, oh, he's pissing me off. He's, drinking or he's going out too much, or she's not holding, carrying her weight, and I'm doing all the work. And so it's really not to say that, if you want it, that's great. But it's also something to remember that that isn't the end all be all. And that doesn't mean that just because you have a person, your life is going to be any more full, or you're more valuable, or I mean, it doesn't speak anything. It doesn't speak to anything, any defect within you.
I really believe that what what the movies that have been
Yeah.
made should be more honest
Yes.
and the programming definitely that women received, and maybe there is programming for men as well, but I can only speak to women, like our programming of like the Disney movies and the knight in shining armor, and um I just feel like let's have some better movies. That's
Have you seen the movie? One of the best movies I've seen in the last few years, Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver.
you
What's
know
that
what
movie
I think
called?
it was too close to home. I was like, I'm gonna pass on that for now.
I watched it in a very with my boyfriend, I think, and I was like, this is the most accurate. Not necessarily they're all that dramatic, but I'm sorry I can't remember the name of it because I thought it was just like
Mhm.
incredibly powerful, so realistic, just so beautiful. In its raw, this is what a relationship can look like, and this is what a real relationship looks like, and people are flawed. And in fact, I want to watch it again. I thought it was like, because I'm an actor, I often watch things and think, oh, this is like an acting class. I can just see the behind. It was like I was in the room with real people experiencing what they were experiencing. So I just wanted to give that a shout out, even though I can't remember the name of it. It's one of my favorite movies ever. So at this point, you were talking about, you're like, I suddenly got my groove back. And it's like that travel. Now I can go wherever I want. I can sleep as late as I want. I don't have to make the bed if I don't want to. My ex has OCD, and he was always like, the bed has to be made, everything has to be. That's great for him. I got too much to do. I don't want to make my bed. If someone's coming over, I'll make my bed. And it's those kinds of little compromises. And to talk about, like, how has work been for you? Like, how have you reinvented yourself? And how have some of having those moments of having to reinvent yourself served you, as I assume business has come back as it has for me? It was like, yeah, it's just how has all of that sort of made you a better practitioner, or anything you'd like to speak about?
When I got back from Costa Rica, that was mid-February, without me doing really very much marketing, all like so many new people like found me and started taking Alexander technique, and business was really booming. And then I actually went to Greece. I
Mhm.
had a I had a milestone birthday. I'll share it. I turned 50 in Greece.
I just turned
And
50. Let's just
oh
shout it out. So let's just shout it out and just own
yeah.
it. It's a little jarring
Yeah.
until you're like, wait, this is actually the best time in my life. It's just
Yeah.
hard to like process. So yes.
And so I did a training, paid for a training on how to put on retreats. Then I went to another retreat in Greece, and
Oh,
that was a women's retreat that was all about embodiment, embodying the goddess, and that was just remarkable. We did dance and chanting and
amazing.
meditation, which is so just like that's like all the things I love. And then I came back from that and like more booming business, and had my highest paid day in my life, where I did a corporate gig, a 30-minute talk, and 25 mini sessions for how they're sitting at their computer, using the
Hmm.
Alexander technique to give them like, oh, this is a sense of like, this is where your support is how you can have length and width and still breathe and not hurt yourself. And then strangely, from September to now, business has really dropped off.
Yeah.
Wonder if that might be related to the strikes,
Hmm.
and that
In LA for sure.
because I'm my business is in LA, so it's possible that maybe that will start to wake up again. But it has been like, do I gotta go back to catering?
I know the economy has been a struggle. And I think I noticed that too, that, I used to book left and right, and now they're like, we can just hire AI because it costs a lot less. And if it's not a commercial and it's just an e-learning or a phone system, who needs a person? So there's a lot of that happening as well. And then, of course, I've noticed that we, not just actors, but a lot of employees, I'm getting paid less than I used to as my bills have gotten higher. So groceries are more expensive. That's why I moved to Arizona from LA. Is I moved to Virginia and then ended up deciding Arizona was a better fit for me. So I am in Arizona, but get to spend time in LA every month to be with my people. But it is a difficult time for people to spend money on things that seem to be it would be great, but it's not like an immediate necessity, like my bills are. But I do believe that I do feel this sense of optimism I just said to my friend, I was like, I'm back. I know I'm back. I know. I said, I think I'm like about to blow. I feel like things are about to blow up. And I feel that way for you too. As an intuitive, this podcast is not my spiritual channel. I have another podcast that is focuses on near-death experiences and spirituality. But as a psychic medium, I'm like, we're going to be good. We're going to be good. And you know what? I want to say that now you have that catering to fall back on. Not to fall back on, but to fill in the gaps. I drive for Amazon Flex. I love it. I love it because I live near Sedona and Flagstaff. So my routes are gorgeous. I have an eBay store. I do mediumship readings. I babysit. So there are a lot of things that we can do that it doesn't mean you're giving up. It just means, hey, while you're waiting for the next client to come in, get out and do an event and then let it be fun. Let it be a social hour that you get paid for.
Yeah, definitely. So I also wanted to share that a part of my metamorphosis is supporting women and being a keynote speaker for women at women's events and giving my story as an inspiration that you can be in a really small place right now, but it is possible to stop shrinking and boldly take up space. So I talk about
Yeah.
empowering your presence and optimizing your performance skills when you're under pressure. And so that is a direction like where I want to support people and inspire people and earn a great living doing keynote.
Yes. Yes. Whenever I pray, I'm not a religious person, but I'm spiritual. And I always say, let me be of service to the most people while also creating massive abundance for myself. And that's how we do it. We do it with love. We're not out there doing this for the money. We're doing it because we're passionate. We have to charge money to pay our bills because it takes up a lot of our time and energy. However, I think that it's beautiful that we can do both. And I yesterday was thinking, I gave a mediumship reading that was fantastic. And I thought, I'm living my dream. After 3 years of thinking it's all over, my career's over, my relationship is suffering, I am feeling hopeless. I don't know what my next move is. What am I going to do? Go back to working in offices as like an assistant? I'd rather die. And it was like I prayed and I did not really have faith, but guess what? It all came back. And that's why I asked you, because I feel like the pandemic kind of taught us that like, hey, you don't have to give up, but just let's diversify. What else can you do? And that you love to do.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be a grind. It can be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take care of doggies.
Oh, yeah. And right now, I'm taking care of Kitty, so you might
Uh-huh.
be hearing a little like
I
bell.
saw kid. I saw little kitty in the background. Yes, that is so beautiful.
Something I'm doing a little bit later in the month. So this is using my passion for dance and salsa. I'm doing a corporate training. It's a lunch and learn. I'm going to a company and giving them an hour-long beginning salsa class.
I mean, can you believe it? That's the best. I have a
Yeah.
friend who also actor. She's an actor. She's struggling. She learned how to get trained to do face painting at children's parties, and she makes really good money doing it. She's not an artist, but they were
Mhm.
like, we'll teach you how to draw the butterfly. We'll teach you how to do these things. And she's like, I'm actually getting paid really well to do this. There's so many different ways that we can diversify. It's not just about, and also I think it's important to remember too that in times of financial uncertainty, um, a lot of it is it's diversifying, but realizing that money doesn't always have to come from a day job because you think, oh, I better get a day job. Money comes when you're of service and you provide a need for somebody, and it can be mowing a lawn, it can be taking care of children, it can be what is maybe my neighbor needs help decluttering. I mean, you just kind of have to think of what am I good at? What do I like? What am I good at? And even connecting with someone is a gift. Not everybody has the ability to connect with others the way that we do. So every one of you has some innate gift that you don't even realize is marketable.
Mhm.
And so I want to know, so I want to thank you so much for sharing your story, but what would you like to leave people with? Anything that comes to mind. I don't really have a specific. I don't want to narrow it down.
Yeah. Um, the importance of spending time with yourself and being quiet with yourself. When you give yourself the gift of quiet, aware time, like, and you can even lay on your back with your knees bent, spend some time with yourself. And if you can't, like, at first it'll be like your internal voice that's going to be like, blah, 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 blah. And giving yourself the gift of letting your breath out slowly while you're spending some quiet time with yourself. It's revolutionary. Everyone's like, I gotta go work out. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. But spend some quiet, non doing time with yourself. It's revolutionary. It's not what the rest of the world is like yelling at you to do. It
Yes.
will change your life.
Thank you so much, Sharon Jakubecy. This is incredibly inspiring to me, and I know it will be for many others. I will have your links below so that if people want to work with you, they can. If they want to hire you for speaking engagements or Alexander Technique, I highly recommend her. As you can see, she knows what she's doing and she's very passionate about it. So thank you so much for spending your time and energy today to share your story of hope.
Thank you, Shannon. It has been such a pleasure to speak with you and hear some of your story. And yeah, I've just had a blast with you.